Hey, this question comes up all the time, and it's a major question, and it's a fair question. It's a right question to ask. Does the Bible endorse slavery? That would include then the slave trade and all the horrors of what was experienced in American history and what goes on in other parts of the world to this day. Does the Bible endorse it? Hey, after all, many followers of Jesus will contrast the teachings of Jesus with the Quran and say, look at how terrible the Quran is and all these calls for violence and things like that. And others will turn around and say, wait a second, your own Bible endorses slavery and all kinds of other horrid practices. Who are you to point a finger? And then many Americans point to conservative Christians and say, what's with you guys? You're trying to impose the Bible on us today? Does that mean endorse slavery again and stoning of adulterers and burning of witches? These are fair and legitimate questions. Let's focus on slavery. Immediately after the Ten Commandments are given, in Exodus 21, these were the first laws that were given to Israel. Exodus chapter 21, it says this. Look, this again right after the Ten Commandments. Now these are the rules that you shall set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the seventh he shall go out free for nothing. Yikes! The Bible endorsing slavery? Let's understand a few things. Number one, there's nothing in the Bible that endorses, sanctions, backs, commends, approves of modern slave trade. Zero. Everything in the Bible is explicitly against it. The idea that you could go to another country, that you could kidnap people against their will, that you could then bring them back and enslave them for life and mistreat them and on, and have millions die in a middle passage across the Atlantic and on and on. No! In fact, many scholars believe that in the Ten Commandments, don't steal means don't steal a person, meaning don't kidnap. And the Bible even talks about fair treatment of your enemies. This is in the same Torah law. So no, there's nothing to commend or approve of modern slave trade. But yes, in ancient Israel, for economic purposes primarily, there was such a thing as slavery. It was couched in humanitarian terms. There were laws that protected the slave. If there was any mistreatment of the slave, let's say the owner was angry and slapped the slave across the mouth and they lost a tooth, they leave and go free based on that. They could not oppress that slave. In fact, there were many who said, hey, I want to stay here for life. It was primarily for economic reasons. It would be more or less like an indentured servant. And it was part of the ancient world where this was very common. The differences being that in the biblical laws, there was much more humanitarian room. In the biblical laws, the slave would also rest on the Sabbath. Under biblical law, after 7 years, they would go free. Under biblical law, no matter how long they said they're going to sign up for, in the 50th year, so let's say 20 years into their servitude, when the 50th year, the Jubilee year came up, they would be freed. And God actually judged the children of Judah in Jeremiah's day for mistreatment of slaves and not releasing them when they were supposed to be released. And then Israel was reminded in the Ten Commandments, remember, you came out of slavery yourselves. And that's why they were told, don't oppress the alien as well. So in point of fact, when you compare laws of slavery in the Bible to laws of slavery in the ancient world, the laws of slavery in the Bible are much, much more humanitarian. And again, it was something economic, something that was done in the larger world. And the same way in the New Testament, there was no way that this new group of believers, numbering dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, is going to overthrow Rome and change the whole system. So instead, something was instituted to teach masters. If you're a Christian master, treat your slave with kindness and grace, knowing you are a slave of the Lord on high. And if you're a servant, if you're a slave, honor your master as if it was the Lord. And then over a period of time, this teaching began to circulate more and more and more until it undid the system from the inside out, because the bloody revolt was going to be counterproductive. All that being said, though, we are not under the Sinai covenant. We have something new and better through the gospel. And Jesus talked about divorce under the Sinai covenant and said it was not ideal. God gave it because of the hardness of people's hearts. So there are other laws that were given that were not perfect for all humanity forever and ever in the world to come. There's not going to be any such thing as slavery that we're dealing with. But this was something, because of fallen man, because of economic needs, because of other things, that was instituted. But it was never God's perfect intent for all time. And now we are called to walk out that higher ethic of the gospel.